All right, has this man lost his mind? He traded a RAV4 even for the Subaru Crosstrek, a new one, 2021. Now this is a Crosstrek Sport. Of course, they're all-wheel drive. It's comparable to the Mazda CX-30, which I just did a video on. Relatively similar type car. The CX-30 that I checked out the other day was a lower end one. The guy paid 25 grand. These listed about the same, but this is a Sport. But like I say, he traded his late model RAV4 even for it because he wasn't satisfied with the RAV4 in Vermont. The RAV4, he didn't like the handling. They got kind of rocky back and forth. But the main thing was, both of them were all-wheel drive. The RAV4, he even had studded snow tires. And he got stuck in the snow, and he got stuck in the mud, and he's never been stuck with this. You gotta realize Subaru was the first massive pioneer of all-wheel drive systems. As far as I'm concerned, for the money, they make the best all-wheel drive system. Now, there are things out there on Porsches and Audis that are insane technology, but it also blows your pocketbook when you see how much the things cost. This is a lower priced vehicle. I mean, they start at 25 grand. You might get 4 wheels for a Porsche and Audi for that, not the whole car, especially not a new one. So in the snow and mud of Vermont, he's much happier with this car. He tried out the RAV4, he didn't like it, he likes this better. There are certain niches for certain vehicles. There are quite a few people I met that didn't like how the RAV4 rode. Realized that even though this is all-wheel drive, subcompact SUV crossover, blah, 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 it's based on a Subaru Impreza sedan. So it actually has a lot better ride than the RAV4. You can see, this is a unibody construction. It's all based on the sedan. They just turned it into a crossover. And I've just been told by the owner and his wife over here that she got nauseous in the RAV4 from the rocking, and she said she hasn't got nauseous in this yet, and that's his main passenger. So, I mean, they do ride better. Now, interestingly enough, when they first came out with these, people loved them, but they said they can't get out of their own way. Well, they fixed that, as you'll see on his. As you can see here, 2.5 liter. So it's got the same size 4-cylinder engine as his RAV4 did, 2.5 liter. But depending on if you're driving city or highway, this thing gets 3 to 4 miles per gallon better gas mileage. RAV4 is somewhat boxier, heavier. So he gets better gas mileage, but at the same time, it handles better. And yes, it's the 4-cylinder Subaru Boxer engine. They fixed head gasket problems decades ago. They don't have head gasket problems anymore. You want something like this. You want a 2.5 liter normally aspirated, because if you look at it, it's not turbocharged. As we look at the front, what's this? It's all metal, because it's got a metal timing chain running the engine. That's what you want. The problem with older Subarus are they had rubber timing belts, and they're interference engines. The belt breaks, goes the engine. Well, because of this design, this crazy Boxer design, 2 cylinders here, 2 cylinders here opposed, changing the timing belt on these Boxer engines was a real pain in the butt. And often people would get them changed, they get the car back and it run like crap because the mechanics did a lousy job. They were not that easy to replace timing belts on correctly. They're not as simple as, say, a Toyota that's got the crank, cam on the top. Simple. They wear out a little bit faster, but they're extremely hard to set up perfectly. You gotta have all the Subaru locking tools. A lot of guys say they could put them on, they'd put them on, they never run right again. Check engine light, it'd come on, time it'd be off. You don't have to think about it as long as you change your oil every 5,000 miles and use that new GF6 oil. That's all you gotta do to maintain these. Interesting enough, this has a CVT transmission in it. So there's no gears. But it's Toyota had that newer Toyota 8-speed automatic transmission, which a lot of people don't like. They're made to maximize gas mileage. That's why they have all those extra speeds, to get better gas mileage. But in order to achieve it, it's always got to be an optimal gear for optimal gas mileage. So they're always hunting for gears, and they feel kind of sloppy a lot of times. Now, if you want, you can put it into manual mode, shift it yourself, and it won't have the sloppiness anymore. But there goes your gas saving down the toilet because you're going to be revving it up higher. This does it by itself with the CVT transmission. The newer CVTs are definitely an improvement over the older ones. As we open the door, zoom in a little, you go by the VIN number. The VIN number is JF2. That means it was made in Japan. There's nothing better than a Japanese vehicle made in Japan. Now, I don't know why this is the case, but it is. So the JF means it's made in Japan, right? But if it was made in the United States, it would say 4S instead. Now, to me, that's not very fair. Should have said America, United States, not 4S. They're just doing that because they don't want you to know that it was put together here. But on the positive side. The ones that are put together here in Indiana, the engines and transmissions are still built in Japan. They just ship them over and then they put the car together here. It's not like they're building everything from scratch. You get the same quality engines and transmissions. They're just put together here, kind of like a Lego set. Take a look inside, see what you get. Sounds solid. Nice black. Little gold trim here because it's sport. Start her up. Sounds like a Subaru, that's for sure. And of course, it's got a nice screen. And I like the screen. This is a screen that is integrated to the dash, right? This isn't some ugly thing that's sticking out on a bump that even blocks your view. It is integrated where it should be. And the things you want to see, there they are up here. You don't have to look all over the place. It's pretty well set up. So it's got a sunroof if you go for that stuff. That doesn't impress me. But it's got various modes for snow. It has heated seats. The wife was cold. We'll turn that off. We don't need that now. Steering wheel for all kinds of modes. It's got everything on it. Fancy warning SOS system and everything on it if you get in a wreck. Comfy, stylish seats in the front. Check out the back seat. Quite a bit of room. Very stylish back seat. It's got a usual subcompact trunk. And of course, like every Subaru made except for their little racy cars, it's all-wheel drive. That's why he got it. He's never got stuck with this in the same places that he got stuck with the RAV4. Subaru does have a better designed all-wheel drive system. Where he lives, he needs it. My son went to the University of Vermont. Boy, I tell you, it snows there and it gets really cold. That's where Subarus come into their own. That's how they started in the United States. They were originally a niche car. People in Colorado buy them. People in Vermont would buy them. Anyways, out in the country, going in snow, going to mountains, they love buying these things. They kind of got off track for a while and started putting those 6-cylinder engines that they have problems. And then they got in a little bit of trouble with that, but now they seem to be going back to their roots and they know what they're doing. Got a decent sized camera, not something puny thing. Now as we get on the road, we can see, hey, it's not overly high and it's certainly not low. As we go over my big lump, it doesn't drag anything. Got that Subaru sound. It does have a CVT. Now, I mean, a lot of cars do. If you want, look, you can put it in manual mode if you want, and you can shift it yourself. It's got paddle shifters here. You want to go down, you go down. You want to go up. There it goes. Now realize, of course, that's fake shifting. It's a CVT, it doesn't have any gears, but it acts like it does to increase acceleration. You can manually do it. Now you'll notice, camera's kind of bouncing around. Hey, it's a subcompact crossover. They all bounce around. My Matrix bounces around. The CX-30 I drove the other day, it bounces around. They are bouncy vehicles. Doesn't bother me, but some people it bothers. It does have that horrible start-stop, and it just stopped. I hate that, but we're gonna try acceleration out with the CVT and a 2.5 liter engine. Here we go. Not bad considering the engine had stopped and then it started again. So you really can't complain. It does have decent acceleration. You're just tiddling along and you step on the gas. It goes pretty fast. And as you corner, they are fun to drive. It does handle quite a bit better than a RAV4. I do have to agree. He didn't like the handling. He didn't like the rocking back and forth because it made his wife seasick. Now, she admitted she didn't get seasick yet with him driving, but if she was with me driving like this, she probably would get seasick. When you're going uphill, step on the gas, it picks up and goes. That is why they put the 2.5 liter engine in. 4 with the smaller engine, they barely got out of their own way. It's fun to drive. It's got plenty enough zip when you step on the gas. And noise level, about average for one of these. They're not quiet, they're not loud. It's about average. You get a subcompact crossover SUV, they're always a little bit on the noisy side. I mean, if you didn't like noise, you could also insulate it like I show in some of my videos. You can buy sound insulation and get it insulated if you want. It'll be a lot quieter. They don't put that much in them. The ride's perfectly fine. It's just the bumps you're gonna feel, but all of these, like I say, every single little subcompact SUV crossover is going to feel the bumps when you hit bumps on the road. That's just the nature of the beast. It's all-wheel drive. It's a relatively short wheelbase. It's going to have a relatively rough ride on bumpy roads. The Subarus never got them stuck in the mud or stuck in the snow, and the RAV4 did, so that's one of the reasons he traded it in even for this. Okay, so what's my conclusion? Is the man insane for trading a RAV4 for this thing? In his case, no. He loves his wife and she's not getting seasick, so that's reason enough, you know? Gets better gas mileage, doesn't get stuck in the snow, is where it snows all the time, gets better gas mileage, and they're both 2.5 four-cylinder engines. One's a boxer, the other's an inline, but this gets better gas mileage. I've seen Subarus go to 300,000 miles, just like Toyotas. They can last a really long time, as long as you change the oil regularly. So really, not that bad of an idea. He just swapped even. Now, in terms of pure money, if he really wanted to, he probably could have sold the RAV4 for more and then bought this instead of trading it in. That's what I would have done. I'm more of a horse trader, you know. But still, they're interesting vehicles because they're based on a car. They're not being based on a truck. They're based on a car, and they ride more like a car, and they get better gas mileage like a car, too. First of all, a lot of people are worried about blowing head gaskets in Subarus. That's the past. Yes, you can learn from the past. The newer Subarus, for well over a generation and a half, don't really have head gasket problems. And some of the older WRXs, if you go back a few years, they had internal engine problems. The engines would blow and people had to replace them. It's the stupid beauty cover, which he's already taken the clips off, and we'll get rid of the leaf on the intercooler. It's a boxer four-cylinder engine. Now, like I say, decades ago they blew head gaskets. It's not a problem they have now. Personally, I'm not a fan of turbocharged engines because they do strain the engines more. But from my experience with these Subarus, the main engine problems I personally see as a mechanic is guys get these and they try to bump them up even higher than they already have. And that's a big mistake if you want long life. Now, in the case of this turbo, I'll give you the perfect example of how they work. He drove this thing over here going 85 miles an hour in a highway, and he got 29 miles a gallon, right? Which, for a small car, isn't great. It's not horrible. At the same time, driving it slow and normal on the highway, he once got 44 miles a gallon. That's a big 29 to 44, right? It's the same car, the same engine, and it's turbocharged. You drive conservatively, the turbocharger rams more air into the engine, and it's actually more efficient. So, it can get better gas mileage. Behind the wheel in this thing, with a 6-speed standard transmission, odds are you're going to be shifting like a bat out of Hades, driving like a lunatic, and getting worse gas mileage. That is the truth of turbocharged cars. That's why many cars are turbocharged these days. On paper for the EPA, they get better gas mileage. But if you drive them hard, you do not. Of course, if you drive it like a maniac, everything's spinning faster. The engine will wear out faster. But if you drive it conservatively, they can still last quite some time. Now, this will never last as long as a normally aspirated non-turbo engine. But from my experience with these Subarus, the turbochargers are pretty well made, and generally, you get 150,000 miles. The turbo might go out a little after that, but you know, that's still a pretty long lifespan. Though, if you're cheapskate like me, you would not buy a turbo because you'd want the engine to last and last and last. And I've seen non-turbo Subarus go 250, 300,000, and they were still running fine. Granted, they're a lot slower. The boxer engine only puts out a certain amount of horsepower, and that's why they throw the turbos on them, so that they can be a lot zippier. And this is a pretty zippy car. But you can see it's a well-designed turbo. It's got a huge intercooler. Leave it alone. The engineers have figured these things out pretty good. They don't have the head gasket problems that they used to have. Don't chance it by putting crazy modifications on something that's fast enough already. Now, the owner of this car says it's the best mistake he ever made, because he went to a Subaru dealer and he told me he wanted a standard. This was the only car they had on the lot that had anything near. He wasn't particularly looking for a WRX, but he loves driving it. It's all-wheel drive, like all Subarus except for their BRZ little race one, and he lives in Pennsylvania. So, does he get stuck in the snow? No, he doesn't get stuck in the snow. Although someone's been backing into things here. But you want to learn something about all-wheel drive and snow, it came with regular tires, not snow tires. And the reason that's bashed in a little is because he drove this in big snowstorms in Pennsylvania, and he said he kept bashing into all the snow drifts. He said this all-wheel drive was useless without snow tires, which I have talked about. He obviously didn't watch that video of mine. It's traction and snow that matters. You get heavy-duty tread and snow tires, you're going to have traction in it. And he was obviously going in pretty deep snow, because I had a guy the other day come with just a front wheel drive car, and he lived in Ohio, and he said he never even put snow tires on, and he drove it around. Obviously, he got a little bit more snow in Pennsylvania than the guy got in Ohio, because you get in deeper snow, you gotta have snow tires. You can't get away with just having regular tires. And of course, this is an all-wheel drive vehicle. So, if you want it to run correctly, you gotta buy 4 snow tires for this baby. You can't just buy 2. If you got a front-wheel drive, you can put your snow tires on the front. But all-wheel drive, you can mess up the all-wheel drive system if you got different sized tires. So, you would have to buy 4 snow tires instead of 2. He didn't buy any, and he slid all over the place. And now this is January, and he still hasn't put snow tires on it yet, so he didn't even learn from his own mistake. So for what you get, if you baby it, these things definitely can last. For $29,000, it's got 268 horsepower. It will be a fast little car to drive around. There's no arguing that. For that kind of money, I do say don't beat the heck out of it, because the more you spin that turbo, the faster your engine's going to wear out. So we'll look inside the door here. It was made in Japan. Now, you notice here they don't say, but see that J? That means it was made in Japan, which is what you want. So we'll get inside, and he's kind of short, so there we go. It's manual, and it won't break. It's simple. We'll start her up. Turn off the radio. Now, this is a more aggressive Subaru. Kind of medium, the back. Not gigantic room, but not totally tight. The main thing, this is a driver's car. 6-speed, definitely see the tach. He's got 20,000 miles on it. He hasn't had any problems yet, of course, other than running into snowbanks with balding tires. And as I said, now it's a turbo and it's got dual exhaust. So, unlike the kind of strange noises that most Subarus make, this one makes a rather pleasing sound. It's a typical boxer engine. They run relatively smoothly, but they have a unique sound. The idle's going down now because it's warming up. And you can see, pretty easy to work on. There's a lot of working room on this thing. Easy access. It's a small engine, stuck in a reasonably large space. You want my advice about Subarus? Never, ever buy a 6-cylinder Subaru boxer engine. They have had so many problems with those engines throughout the years, and they continue to have problems with them. They went for a bigger displacement, and it bit them in the rear end. Valves were eaten. The lifters clack like mad. They just are not very good engines. Boxer engines are never insanely high horsepower for their size. They just aren't. And with 250 plus in this thing, that's all you need for a car this size. The Subarus that do have the 6s, like I say, I would stay away from them. They don't put them in these, but any of them that they do, if you're smart, you want to be wise with your money, don't buy one. They just don't hold up. We'll go into the refuse pile here, put the beauty cover back on. Kind of a small panel, but I mean, it's sort of an economy car, so you kind of expect that. He says it's jinxy, does weird stuff. Got a little bitty backup camera. You can see, I'm nothing great, but they have to put them on by law, so. As he said, this is a 2022, but the technology is 2015 on this. And you can hear it definitely sounds like a Subaru engine. That's the noise they make, only it's a little louder. It's got a more aggressive exhaust system on it. He hasn't changed anything, though. It's all stock. Visuals, the front's fine, but I do have to say, backwards, I can see how he hits snowdrifts because you really have a very blind spot rear end. You better learn where the rear end of this car is if you're driving it, because you can't see what the heck is behind you under there. So really, this is one of these cars that you could really go with the 360-degree camera, so you could see what the heck's going behind you. You might not even care about the sides, but you'd want to know what's going on behind you because you got no idea. And out we go into the countryside to our little drag strip here. We'll come to our little stop and we'll see what this 250 plus horsepower thing can do. Get a lot of gas, here we go. Hey, it's got some horsepower. He actually is just learning how to drive a standard transmission, and really, he's not doing that bad of a job. This thing is a little rocky. Low enough to the ground that they handle really well in the twisties too. Now the owner did show me one thing though. I mean, this is a new car and the screws have come off on the armrest and it's broken, so Maybe they could have built that a little bit better. The cigarette lighter doesn't work anymore. To give a little human interest story, he actually lived in this car for a couple of months with his cat. The cat isn't making any comment though. But it was in the summer in Pennsylvania. He's not insane. He didn't do it in the middle of the winter. He did it in the summer when Pennsylvania is a rather pleasant place. Now, he actually had ulterior motives in buying this because his ultimate plan is to turn it into an overlander. He wants to raise it up, put big tires on it, and put a camping platform on the top and go all around the country camping. It is all-wheel drive. Subaru makes probably the best all-wheel drive system in the world in terms of how it works and how it doesn't break down. That's one thing they do not have problems with. Their all-wheel drive systems are excellent all-wheel drive systems. Sure, there's fancy ones, Audi and stuff, that can do more, but in terms of what it costs, how long it can last, and the practically no maintenance is needed other than changing the fluids every once in a while. They're pretty bulletproof all-wheel drive systems. So, future, this thing will come back as an overlander with a camper on top of it. I'm not big on modifying vehicles because I like them the way they are, but of course, you're going to turn this to an overland camper. That's pretty interesting because if you're going to buy an overlander camper, you're going to pay a fortune, right? And if you're going to start modifying the stuff yourself, hey, when you drop the seats, you got a lot more room inside. That would be an interesting project. The trunk has enough space for 4 full-size tires, so it could be a serious off-roader, you know? As a transportation car, it's pretty solid. You're not getting all the bells and whistles that you expect from other cars, but then again, you're only paying $29,000. 2022 Subaru BRZ that a guy bought a few months ago, and we'll see how it's held up, show you the features. You can decide, do you want to get one? Maybe you're thinking about getting one. Maybe you're thinking about a Toyota 86 instead. Well, I'll tell you everything. They're beautiful little sports cars, and they're classic roadsters. They have an engine in the front, and they're rear wheel drive. And the owner of this car is a Toyota fan. He was going to buy a Toyota, but he couldn't get one and the prices were higher. He bought the BRZ instead. Realized one thing. The difference between the Subaru and the Toyota is the emblem and the front fender is a little bit different on the Toyota. Realize one thing. Both the Subaru and the Toyota are made by Subaru. This one says Subaru. The Toyota's made by Subaru too. They have the same exact choice of you can get a 6-speed manual transmission or you can get an automatic transmission. Now he opted for the 6-speed. He wants to drive around and have some fun. And the interesting thing is he's getting 29.1 miles a gallon, which is actually better than the rating for this thing as an overall gas mileage. Now on paper the automatic's rated higher than the standard, but he drives conservatively and he got 29.1 driving around. So, you know, decent gas mileage for a sporty little car. And under the hood is the Subaru Boxer 4-cylinder engine, 228 horsepower. It's not turbocharged or anything. Being a 2022, a lot of people are worried about silicone gaskets that they use instead of regular gaskets. Some of them have too much silicone, and one guy claims it sucked the silicone in the oil pickup and it blew his engine up. Now that was in a Toyota GR86, same car like I say. Originally Toyota wasn't going to give him another engine, but they finally decided they're going to. Now this guy's already had the oil changed in this, and there was no silicone inside the oil filter. Now I've had another customer, when he changed his oil, which happened to be a Toyota, he said he had a bunch of silicone in the oil filter. But realize this, the oil filter filters the oil. So I'm assuming that filter caught all the silicone. Now, just myself, if I would have found silicone in the oil filter, this one didn't, but on a Toyota it did. I'd have to say if it was my car, I would pull the oil pan just to make sure that the oil screen that feeds the oil pump didn't have silicone starting to block it. I would personally do that. I wouldn't want to chance it. Now, if you don't see any in the filter, there's none going anywhere else. And also realize the guy that blew the engine in a Toyota, I believe he was racing around on a track somewhere, right? So he's probably going real fast, and if it plugged up and the oil pressure stopped, boom goes the engine. A normal driver, you're just driving around. If the oil feed did get blocked up, your oil light would come on. You'd hear the engine maybe making a little clang noise, but you see the oil light, meaning the oil pressure was too low, and you'd shut it off. And knowing that they might have a problem with the gaskets in these engines, I would tow it home and I'd take it apart and I would pull the pan, and if there was a bunch of silicone in there, I would take it out. If you did have one and you're a fanatic, you're gonna race around, me, I'd pull the oil pan out. But he didn't have any coming up here. He's had no problems. So, as a guess on my own behalf, I'm assuming that some of the engines they built, somebody went too much with the gasket, and they put too much silicone and it squeezed and pieces came off. And maybe it's a certain amount of them that did that, but it's certainly not all of them, because this one didn't have it at all. You see, it's a sports car, so it's relatively low to the ground. You don't fly over speed bumps. But being a classic rear-wheel drive, these things are a lot of fun to drive. Now, you might not think 228 horsepower is that much, but it is a little car, and in this case, it's a 6-speed standard transmission. He opted for the standard because it's more fun to drive, and I agree entirely. Now, this guy was also looking at the nice Mazda Miata, which he liked. It was also in a standard. It doesn't have that room. Of course, it's a 2-seater. Now, technically, this is a 4-seater. Let's face the facts. There's not much room between the seats. You're gonna have awful small people back here. But it does have back room. Up and down, you can have more space. And it's also a hardtop. Now, for those of you who ever had rag tops, you realize you got that rag top on. It is loud. Especially when you're on a highway. You ride around with a rag top, you hear these 18-wheelers, you think, oh my God, they're gonna run me over, right? Because the rag tops are noisy. It's a lot quieter than the Mazda. But if you're gonna get one of these Subarus, I strongly advise getting a standard. They're automatics, you lose a reasonable amount of power. And in the past, Subaru has always had automatic transmission weakness in their cars. The standards, no, but the automatics, they're somewhat weak. And a lot of people are going to say, but Scotty, these boxer engines blow head gaskets all the time. And yes, they used to decades ago. They didn't get the materials right, and the head and the block would expand and contract a little differently, and head gaskets kept blowing. But a long time ago, they fixed that. These are not head gasket blowing machines anymore, and they haven't been for a long time. I like the fact that it's a 4-cylinder because I do not like the Subaru 6-cylinder boxer engines. They've had overheating problems. I just do not like their 6-cylinder engines. They put out more horsepower, but they have had a lot of problems where at least a decade and a half, these 4-cylinder boxers, they just run and run and run. And of course, they get better gas mileage. Like I say, he's getting 29.1 miles a gallon. You can't argue that. And it might be a sports car, but it's got all the conveniences. Anti-lock brakes, airbags all over the place. Now we'll start it up. Starts right up, killer AC. And it's got a nice sports car dash. It has the miles per hour in the middle, and it's got the tachometer. So you got the tach, which your real driver with the standard ones, but the speed is right there in the middle, so you can't miss it. You can also do track. It's got a real pleasant digital readout for your AC, which you control both sides. Plus, it's got a decent panel here, not one of those outrageously giant ones that kind of drive me nuts. And we'll put it in reverse. And you can see it has an excellent backup camera, so you can see what's going on. Full color, but it's got nice resolution too. It's not a cheesy one. Black, red trimmed seating setup. Bunch of big AC vents. It's not a little sports car that you're going to get hot in. It's got a good air conditioning system. You turn it up full blast, and it will freeze you out. Especially if you're like me and you turn it all the way to low. So I'd take it for a spin. Now it's relatively low to the ground because it's a little sports car. A little roadster. Rear-wheel drive, and these things are a hoot to drive. And it's got that boxer sound. They make that unique sound that only a boxer engine makes. Very smooth shifting, and it's got very responsive anti-lock braking. We hit them hard, it comes to a stop, doesn't make a sound. Now we'll take it to our little drag strip here. Come to a stop. We have the track off, and let's see. It's got some horsepower. This thing is fun to drive. Now, like I said, it's only got 228 horsepower. Kind of feels like it's got more in this light car. It's pretty zippy with that 228 horsepower. And the boxer engines have a decent amount of torque to them. You just notice as we're driving down the road, though, The corn is a lot taller than the car is. Now, it is a classic rear-wheel drive car. You could turn the traction control off, and of course, you could drift with this car, but you know, you're not talking about an insane drifter. It's only got 228 horsepower. You can drift around in it, but it's not a screaming drifter car. It doesn't have the horsepower that a real drifter car would have. It's a fun little sports car to drive around in. The twisties, it's a riot to drive around. Plus, unlike many sports cars, quiet as a church mouse when you're idling. The only thing you hear is a little boxer noise. That's it. Now, from my own experience, I gotta say, this thing is a bit more fun to drive than a Mazda Miata. If you wanna turn off the traction control, have a little fun. But that said, I would only buy the Subaru or the Mazda with the standard. I would not get them with an automatic transmission. They are not as much fun to drive then. They're kind of boring then. Fine, these things are a lot of fun to drive on the twisties. They hug the road quite well. They got good tight suspension, low to the ground. You don't feel like you're ever really losing control. You really don't have to slow down in the curves. You can speed up if you want. You can take it because look, I'm driving around like a maniac and the average mile per gallon really hasn't changed that much. Some cars it would have dramatically dropped. But hey, this little engine's made to take it. Gliding downhill and it's getting 127 miles a gallon. Whoa, look at that. I guess if you only drove downhill, you'd get phenomenal gas mileage. Just take my advice. If you do want to buy one, buy the Subaru. Don't pay extra for the Toyota. And really, they're a lot more fun with the standard transmission. I've driven them with automatics and they're okay, but they don't make you smile like this thing does. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.